Facebook has changed their security settings since our last meeting, so it won't let me put it live there. So Marlis, I don't know if you're listening, or we can grab Marlis and ask her to put the Zoom link so anyone on Facebook can go into the Zoom directly. Okay, so Marlis, hopefully if you can hear me, go ahead and put the info for folks to log in and watch from the Zoom, because Facebook will not let me put it live this evening. Okay. And we will go ahead and call this regular meeting of the Nevada City Council to order on Monday, April 26, 2021 at 6:02 p.m. Can we start with a roll call, please? Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Okay, first item on the agenda is a public hearing. Public hearing A, there's sale of property Gates Hall, so we will go ahead and open that public hearing.
Approval of the agenda.
Oh, sorry, I skipped an item. Approval of the agenda, and then we'll open the public hearing. Approve the agenda. So Brian and I had multiple seconds. We'll give it to Barb. So approval of the agenda, any discussion? Seeing none, council, please vote. Okay, it flashed really quickly, but I'm assuming it passed. So we're go ahead to the public hearing. A public hearing A, sale of property Gates Hall. Karen, did we have any written comment? The council has not been provided yet. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. And was there anyone online wishing to speak, or is everybody here, you know, that wished to speak? Okay. So we will open for public comment. I don't know if anybody has yellow cards filled out that wishes to speak on Gates Hall. If you do, you can bring those up, and then we'll have you go up to the podium. Okay, anybody wishing to speak about Gates? Okay, then seeing none, we will close the public hearing and move to resolution number 98, 2020-2021, a resolution to dispose of real property Gates Hall, which opens up for a council.
Move to approve.
I'll second. Okay, so we have a motion by Barb, second by Dane. So it opens up for discussion.
I just want to say thanks to Marlis for putting together that document with all the question and answers. I think that answered a lot of the concerns that we saw on social media, and just put the facts out there. And I really do appreciate that.
Any other discussion?
I think it's pretty clear the school district plans to keep the facility open for the same purpose that we had it open for, and I think that's still in the spirit of Maple Gates.
Well, and I was thinking that the interweaving of the school and the city with regards to the property before the building and the building since then, that I trust that it's in good hands, but I also see it, the sale, as an opportunity for that legacy to kind of live on in a whole community way at the field house at SCORE. So it's kind of like she gets like a second chance at leaving a legacy, because this is really going to go help us move forward with that project as well.
Seeing no further discussion, council, please vote. Okay, that is approved. Takes us to item B, ITC electric transmission franchise. We'll open up that public hearing. Karen, did we receive any comment? Okay, and is there anyone here wishing to speak in that public hearing? Then seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Move into ordinance number 1017, 2020, 2021, an ordinance amending the city code of Nevada, Iowa by adding chapter 114 electric transmission franchise with ITC Midwest LLC.
Approved.
Second.
Okay, Jason and Sandy, discussion. Okay, seeing none, council, please vote. Okay, that is approved. Takes us to the consent agenda. Any item may be removed for separate consideration.
Move to approve.
Any discussion? And seeing none, council, please vote. And that is approved. Takes us into the public forum, which is time to decide for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. No action may be taken. We have a couple items there. One is a proclamation for Economic Development Week, which I won't bother reading in full. Council has it in packets, and then we'll get it up on social media as well so folks can read it in full. But it's proclaiming May 9th through May 15th, 2021 as Economic Development Week in the city of Nevada. So thank you, John and NEDC, for providing that for this year. Which then takes us to a swearing in of our new police officer, which is really exciting to have a new officer joining us. So we'll have Rick come forward and do an introduction, and we will do the swearing in.
Good evening. Kellen's been kind of anxious all day long because he knows he's been coming to this, and generally we have more lead time when we hire a police officer, but we didn't have a lot of lead time this time. So generally what I do is I have them prepare a statement that I can read to you, but his was like 2 pages long, so I cut it down, so it'll be a lot shorter. He will start the academy a week from today. So we're putting together a uniform for him and trying to get everything together before he goes to the academy next Monday. So it's going to be kind of a busy week for him. Got to get him out on the range and all that sort of thing. So, but I'll read this and then we can get this over with. Kellen was born in Des Moines in October 1998. He's the son of Steve and Karen Sidneys, with one older brother named Kyle. His father works for Wells Fargo and his mother works for Unity Point. Kellen attended school in Ankeny, played sports including basketball, baseball, football, track, cross country, and wrestling. After graduating high school, Kellen joined the Marine Corps in October 2016. Kellen received a medical discharge in 2018. Kellen has desired to be a police officer for quite some time and is very pleased to now be working for the Nevada Public Safety Department. I think he's going to be a good addition to us. So.
So I'll be reading for the top. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
Thomas Simmons,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa
and the City Code of Nevada, Iowa,
and the City Code of Nevada, Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
and I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties
discharge all the duties
of the office of police officer
of police officer
for the City of Nevada, Iowa,
for the City of Nevada, Iowa,
as now or hereafter required by law.
and as of now or hereafter required by law.
Our newest police officer. Okay, that continues on in our public forum. Was there anyone else wishing to speak in the public forum?
Yeah, Brett, Mr. Mayor, I got a letter from a constituent in my ward that wanted to conceal her, wanted to not necessarily identify herself because of the roles that she's got in the community. But she sent me a letter that she wanted me to read during public forum. Is that appropriate? Okay.
Sure.
Her letter states, to whom it may concern, I was wondering if there's anything that can be done by the city council regarding the Nevada Public Library's reluctance to reopen permanently. Most other businesses have found ways to get back to normal and open their doors to the public months ago. That does not seem to be the mindset of the library. My concern is that by dragging their feet for such a prolonged period of time, they will become irrelevant, no longer a welcome place for our school children, a useful resource for all citizens, or a cornerstone in the foundation of our community. All other businesses in our community are open, and yet the library is lagging behind. Our schools have been open in person for learning for the entire year and have offered extracurriculars with spectators with admirable results and low COVID numbers. Groups are resuming public and private events, getting back into the swing of things. Restaurants, hotels, and travel are bouncing back as their patrons return. In fact, it seems that the NPL is the last library in Story County to still be so restrictive. People are getting vaccinated so they can get back to normal. Requiring a mask when entering a business is commonplace, but will most likely get less and less so as more people get vaccinated. Certainly in any setting, a person is welcome to wear a mask if they don't feel comfortable without one. It would not be out of question for the library to simply require mask usage and to postpone group programming a little while longer. But make no mistake, even those restrictions will be a thing of the past soon. The 5% positivity rate, which seems to be the magic number for the library for some reason, could be the norm for years to come. And where will the library be then? I won't take time to talk about Story County, where Story County is with its COVID numbers, or debate if the virus is transmitted on hard surfaces, or discuss the correct way to analyze data trends. I don't believe this is a question of science anymore. More accurately, it's a question of the future of the Nevada Public Library's relevancy to our community as an active, valued contributor. Right now, they are essentially a shuttered facility, happy to keep their patrons virtual with no change on the horizon. Frankly, I'm curious how many people participate in the virtual events, which on paper make it look like they're serving the public, but probably have few actual logins. What do I suggest? Let people take personal responsibility for their safety. Those who are vaccinated did so for a reason. Those who still don't feel comfortable can wear a mask or choose to continue with curbside pickup. But open the doors and give the people a choice. Let the kiddos come for story time and enjoy all those books, which, by the way, were bought with taxpayer funds. Be a safe space for those who love a quiet environment with the company of good books. Let people spontaneously drop in to browse for books and movies. Make the computers available anytime for those who can't afford or choose not to have internet at their home. And open the conference room so civic groups can resume meeting. Let's get back to life. Like I said, she didn't want her name involved. And I do understand, I asked Jordan right before this, and it sounds like library has opened back up, if that's my understanding. But I was looking at the Facebook page today, and other than a lot of videos from Mr. T, who, by the way, does a fantastic job, there was nothing publicly posted that I could find. So.
Well, and Karen, the meeting owl is kind of crooked, so folks online aren't really seeing anyone up here. So someone can try to adjust that quickly. That would be probably good.
Dane, did you encourage them to pass that along to the library board?
I told him I would find the contact.
That's where the authority is. We don't.
Right,
that's
right. Yeah, I told her that as long as it was appropriate, I would read it, but then I'd also forward it
Completely
along.
outside of our authority.
Speaking of, where can we find the contact information for the library board? Because I've struggled to find such.
He happens to be Adam Rydell, is the chairperson.
Right. I know Adam, but I didn't know if there's a way to find their information, because if they do have that choice and they are officially responsible to taxpayers, I would like to at least have them be accessible so that taxpayers can voice those concerns. Because right now we're the public faces and we're the one that get these questions and these comments, and we're more or less kind of acting as a buffer to them. So
I believe the new
Next.
website will at least have everybody's contact info. I don't know about the current one, but Marlis is in the final stages of building out the new one.
And the board still meets via Zoom where people can talk publicly to them too.
do they post that anywhere though?
I have no idea.
Could be.
And I mean, if not,
Yeah.
I know obviously they've got a situation where they don't have they've got Amanda as the interim right now, but with Shanna gone, I mean, we've got Marlis as a resource. They could certainly use her if they need help.
It's probably not a bad idea, since I'm sure Marlis is listening, to post the boards and commission meeting notices to social media like she does the council ones. Get a wider
Like that.
part of that. Okay. Anything else in the public forum? And then we will close the public forum, move to old business. There's old business A, approved pay request number 4 for the wastewater treatment facility phase 1 from Wethold Excavating LLC in the amount of $173,867.34.
Move to approve?
Second. Jason, Brian, discussion? Seeing none, council, please vote. That is approved. Takes us to item B, resolution number 99, 2020, 2021, a resolution modifying the emergency response to COVID-19 pandemic.
Move to approve. Second.
Barb and Sandy, discussion on the updated resolution.
Thank you for wading through that and finding the relevant pieces.
Yep, you're welcome.
And seeing no other discussion, council, please vote. And that is approved. Takes us into new business. New business A is approved neighborhood improvement incentive program for 404 I Avenue, Cary and Sherry Martin.
Move to approve?
Second.
Okay, Luke and Jason, discussion?
We had some discussion earlier about, not that there's anything wrong with Cary using their business to do the demolition and stuff. But maybe it's in the future, if it's gonna be maybe their own personal business, maybe we get multiple quotes. So at least we know we're double checking that we're not throwing our money away. So I don't think we have a precedent set for that.
I just think it's the perception that Cary and Sherry have a property and he's gonna pay himself to do the demolition, yet using our taxpayers' money to do it. I don't think Cary's that guy that's gonna be
Taking advantage of it.
taking advantage, but you never know when that could happen. So do we need to, in that case, or should we do it in every case, make them supply more than one estimate? Because it's really, it's half our money. If Jason would do it for 15,000 and my company do it for 9, then, that's half of that's ours. So that's, I think, doing our due diligence for our tax money.
Yeah, we can,
Like I said, I don't think we have that in the program now, but maybe we should look at it in the future that
We
just to,
propose some language for the
Yes.
program, and just make it maybe similar to what the city's purchasing policy is too.
Yeah.
And mirror the language.
Honestly, I think multiple quotes would be good in any circumstance, just so we know that there is a good deal being
I
had.
don't think there's probably any impropriety with this, but it
No.
just brought it to my attention when I was reading it, that, because I honestly thought of the same thing at my old property. could I be the contractor to do my own demo? And it never came to fruition because I sold my house, but I always thought, God, maybe I couldn't do that. So I think we just probably need to keep ourselves covered in that situation.
For the future.
Anything else about that topic? Okay, seeing none, council, please vote. And that is approved. Takes us to new business B, resolution number 100, 2020-2021, a resolution setting requirements for the sale of certain property located in the amended and restated urban renewal area, determining that the proposal submitted by a potential purchaser satisfies the requirements and declaring the intent of the city to accept the proposed proposal in the event that no competing proposals are submitted, and 3, soliciting competing proposals.
Move to approve.
Second. Brian and Dane. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, council, please vote. That is approved. Takes us to the next item, which is nuisance hearing for 536 4th Street. So we'll go ahead and begin that hearing. I believe Aaron has some documents to pass out for council to look at.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there's homework. You actually, there's homework. You have to make a decision.
Okay, so for some of you, it's probably your first hearing on the council, and I know it's probably one of my first ones running. So you'll have the exhibits in front of you that will go with the testimony. So Aaron will make sure I'm doing this correctly. So first we will have Director Reynolds come up and give his case. You'll get to ask him questions, and then the respondent gets to come up, give their case, and you get to ask them questions. So we'll have Director Reynolds come forward, and he will probably refer to some of the documents in front of you as he goes through it.
Ray Reynolds, I'm the fire chief here in the city of Nevada. This was actually brought forth by the building department. I was brought in on this case to assess the safety of the building. I think it's important to point out just a couple of things in my background that are pertinent to this house. My current, as of this week, I have 542 fire investigations that I've conducted as a certified fire investigator. I am certified as an inspector for the Fire Service Training Bureau, and I've conducted numerous safety inspections, condemnations since 1996 with the State Fire Marshal's Office and through my involvement with the city. This is a property that on December 17th, 18th, the old record system is archived, but you'll have access to my narrative, fire narrative. This house sustained substantial damage. It's not a porch fire. This is a fire that had gasoline poured throughout the living room. The gas can was found in the living room. The fire was in that entryway, porch, and living room. This house filled with superheated gases that put smoke throughout the entire facility. Pressurized this house. There were some windows on the top floor that were cracked because of heat. This house sat vacant for some time. The insurance company actually, by law, held 10% with the intent of destroying this house, removing it. That's common in state law that they withhold 10% of the final payment so that cities aren't left with burnt properties and in their community. There are a number of houses that have sustained fire that it takes a substantial amount of time to work through the insurance process and litigation and such as that. But the end goal for anyone, insurance company and the city, is to remove the hazard and get it out of the community with the intent of building potentially a new house in that site. That's generally how it works. If you look at exhibit number 1, the definition of the code talks about unsafe buildings. If you look at number 1, it's inadequately maintained. Number 2 is a fire hazard as determined by the fire chief. And number 3 is buildings that are abandoned. If you continue on to tab number 2, you'll look in the definition of unsafe building as you talk for unfit for human habitation. I've underlined a couple of words. A fire hazard structure because of its dilapidated condition, deterioration, or other cause. And then abandonment, which is it's been abandoned for 6 months. This house has not been habitable since this fire. One of the things that, if you look at tab 4, you'll look at the report from the architect that outlines on the second page all of the items that would need to be repaired in order to make this house habitable. I think there's some important things to point out, that this isn't just pulling plaster off and putting drywall on the walls. This is a house that reached 14,000 degrees, I'm sorry, 1,400 degrees in flashover conditions and had significant pressurized smoke throughout the house. As a firefighter, cancer is the #1 cause of, along with fatigue for our folks that become injured. The exposure to toxins, cyanide gas, hydrogen sulfide, a number of byproducts that are related to the fire are pretty significant health concerns for the fire service wearing protective gear. To have a surface that is exposed to soot and superheated gases like that compromises the safety of that home. In many cases, the house is removed because insurance companies don't want to deal with a mold claim 5 years down the road from having us spray water into the building. In this case, there was a heat that caused or a freezing that caused a water pipe to break, which also contributed to water being put into the home. But the bottom line is, without a substantial fire restoration of this home, I couldn't in good conscience think that we would put a family inside that home. When you look at the items on number 4 that it talks about replacing, I'd like to bring your attention to number 10 specifically. It talks about all plastic sheet electric wires exposed or concealed in walls. All the wires above the basement have been exposed to heat beyond safe usage levels and need replaced, whether or not they show direct signs of fire damage. If you look at the ductwork in the furnace, if you look at the materials on the repair of the walls. So is this house in imminent danger of collapse? Absolutely not. It looks like a house when you drive by. The concern is that this house has sat for 6 years with some plaster that's been pulled off, some efforts to attempt to cover some of the fire damage, and it has not been restored. It is not, the hazards have not been removed. And so if you look at some of the exhibits Mr. McVeigh has provided, the pictures that you'll see, in fact, the architects have pictures as well, that just show you the extent of a lot of the fire damage. You can see that there was fire damage all the way to the peak of the house and went in deep charring. So why is this house on our radar? Well, this is one of many. This is a house that is not habitable, and to simply put drywall over the walls, I think is unconscionable. There are other houses that are going to come before you as a council that are in dilapidated conditions when you think of unsafe. But I certainly have some concerns that this house has sat like this for a number of years. It's not getting resolved, and it's not getting better. And lastly, I want to talk about the hazard to our fire department. An abandoned house is an imminent risk to our firefighters. As our volunteer firefighters see these abandoned homes, they become intractable nuisances. We can point to a number of homes that folks have broken into, accessed. In fact, Mr. McVeigh's got one that happened. And there's a number of folks that have gone into that property, engaged in drug activity, not by any blessing on his part by any means. He immediately responded when we called him. But houses that are abandoned provide an opportunity for folks to break into, to squat, to sit there. And they're also at risk of fire because they don't have heat, they don't have utilities, they don't have water. And so people use unsafe cooking, they use lighters, they use cigarettes, they use unsafe heating appliances when they're in these properties, and they have the potential to become a fire risk. Well, why that affects us is because if a house is on fire, we're going to go in and we're going to search for occupants. You can tell me it's abandoned all day long, but fires without utilities don't just happen miraculously. Somebody had human intervention in that fire to start that. So short of a lightning strike or something natural like that, we're going to go in and search them. And in a condition like this house is in, where the roof, the trusses have been charred, the substantial damage inside this house, I think it presents an even quicker collapse risk for our firefighters. Again, the building department started this notice due to the condition of the house. And I was injected into this as a result of my duties to look at this unsafe building. And I'll take any questions if you have them.
Okay. Council questions for Director Reynolds?
You'll have another opportunity to once we hear from the property owner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll allow the property owner and representation to address the council.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Don Jewell, and my client here is Todd McVeigh. He's the proud owner of this residence. And I will tell you right away that nobody's living in it, of course. He doesn't have any intention of moving anybody in, him or himself or anybody else. And while we're on this nice book that's been put together, it's very comprehensive. I will just read the last, next to the last paragraph from the Benjamin Design Collaborative memo that's under tab 4. It says, looking over the list, there seems to be a lot of work to do, but the investment made to bring the existing home back into use for a family will be well worth the effort. I look forward to seeing the finished results. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as we look at the pros and cons of condemning or not condemning this building. It's interesting to note that even though it's supposed to be a bad fire hazard, there haven't been any fires there since the main one that occurred 5 years ago. Todd McVeigh has bought and sold properties. He's rebuilt properties in this area for many years, and he was well on his way to getting this one done when he was ordered to stop work on it. And I think before we got some pictures we'd like to pass around, and hopefully you can multitask and listen to him speak as we pass around some photographs. So Todd, I'm going to ask you to take your mask off, and first of all, why don't you tell us just briefly, as briefly as you can, what you were doing as far as renovation when you were ordered to stop, and who told you to stop. Step up to the microphone.
All right, my intent was to get the property weatherized, wintertight, and attractive to the neighborhood while I could do the work on the inside. We went ahead and replaced multiple windows, went through and took all the burned vinyl siding off and replaced that, as well as the insulation board that was underneath it. and went ahead and got it so it's weather tight and structurally sound. The fire appeared to be started in the front porch and rolled out the windows and up the sides of the outside of the house, starting the vinyl siding on fire, and then that proceeded to go up. And I sure there were multiple fires on the inside as well, just created by the heat. And I am very grateful for the fire department for responding as quickly as they did and leaving me with something to actually work with.
Todd, why did you stop working on it?
Well, I went in and talked to Sean Cole, and he said that I could not work on my own property. I had to hire licensed contractors to do all the work. There was nothing that he was going to allow me to do, even with 23 years worth of construction and rental property experience.
So you quit?
So I basically finished the outside stabilization and have not been able to work on it since.
All right, Todd, I'm going to hand you these photographs one at a time, and you just explain what they are, and then I'll start passing them around to the council and the officers here. All right. All right. And what I'm going to be doing is going through the report of Ray Reynolds, I believe is the author. Yeah, the director of fire and EMS. This report here, which I'm sure is in your book, and we have photographs that we would like to comment on briefly. And as we go through here, and they're numbered, I've numbered my pages 2, 3, 4, 5, and they correspond to the numbers on the back of these photographs. So let's start out with complaint number 1, abandoned or dilapidated or unsafe structures. These are kind of conclusions. They're really not facts that we want to talk about. It's easy to offer a conclusion about anything, and but we need to get down to the facts. Is this really in that bad a shape, and is it rehabilitative? Okay, so first, let's skip over number 1, because as I say, that's mainly conclusions. We'll go to number 2, which that shows a stairway that looks like a big mess. And Todd, make a few comments on the big photograph 2 there, would you?
All right, this picture in my hand is basically a picture of the steps going up to the second floor, approximately 8 feet from the initial fire in the porch. And the steps themselves have not been compromised in any way. The floor is a ceramic tile, so it withstood the fire quite well. And the wall behind it is basically the original plaster. The whole house was done in an 80s style paneling. And when the fire flashed through it, it started the paneling on fire, but the firefighters put that fire out, and the existing wall paneling, or the wall coverings, the plaster and the lath and all that stuff, were not exposed to near as much smoke and damage as initially might have been thought.
All right, Todd, there's 3 more photographs that go with the stairs. I'll start passing these around here.
All right.
Just briefly comment on those.
Yeah, this is a picture of the steps going up at the full set. Both these pictures here, well, all 3 of these pictures, show that there is absolutely no fire damage to the steps whatsoever. The heat did blister the varnishes on them, of course. The tack strip are the white strips on the bottom. They were carpeted, and the carpet's been removed and disposed of.
Have any of the steps been burnt or structurally demolished so you couldn't?
I would be entirely comfortable walking up and down them, as would, I think, anyone in this room.
Have you walked up and down them?
Multiple times.
Didn't get break any of them or bust any of them?
No, I was fortunate.
All right, let's move on to complaint number 3, wasp nest. Wasp nest, we had a wasp nest or 2, right?
Yeah, there were wasp nests observed in the initial report, and all of the wasp nests that I found were located up in the very, very peak on the end of the house, and one was underneath a soffit on the second floor. I had to get my 22-foot step ladder out to climb up there onto the roof and actually remove them. And these pictures here show the wasp nest itself in my hand. The 22-foot ladder that I had to use to remove it. The wasp nest itself is circled in marker. And then this is the wasp nest that was attached to the ceiling. At a later date, I noticed that there was a second wasp nest that was up in the top, and that had been sprayed many years ago. I recall it, later.
So you removed one of the wasp nests.
I removed one of the wasp nests, and the other one I believe is completely saturated with wasp and hornet's nest killer.
So there's no live wasp.
I do not believe so.
Okay.
Just so the council knows, the wasp nests were not part of the complaint that we're talking about today.
All right, number 4.
Can I ask, when you say number 4, what page are you on there? Yeah.
I'm going to unnumbered page 3. Item number 4, it starts out, you can see the degree of charring is very substantial and not just light heat. So simply covering this up is unconscionable to consider putting occupants in this home. Well, we haven't put any occupants in, and I think Mr. McVeigh will testify with regard to whether or not he's just merely covering things up. But so let's talk about number 4, and I'll hand him a couple photographs here, and he'll just briefly explain what that is.
The fire that traveled on the outside of the house did catch the vinyl siding on fire. And these are pictures of the fire before I removed anything. The black product that's underneath my thumb is tar paper, which I believe is highly flammable. The tannish stuff is a foil polyiso insulation, foil on both sides. I have a sample of that I removed from the house prior to replacing the siding and the insulation board.
So this has, you said that the tar paper is not flammable?
The tar paper is probably highly flammable because it's covered with tar and paper.
Is that, none of it burned, is that correct?
Well, it appears to be intact.
Okay. And what about, you said something, is that it's got aluminum foil on one side?
No, it's foil on both sides, and it's got insulation board that you buy. It was used in the 80s when they did this renovation, I would imagine. And I do have a sample of the board that I actually removed from the fire. And
why don't you take that out?
I think well, it does have some crunchiness to it, but the board itself is foil on both sides, much like you'd wrap a potato when you're cooking in the oven to keep it from burning. So the fire actually burned this, it burned the siding, but the actual sheeting of the house was not damaged because of this. And this is, you can see the fire damage on that. The backside was, the shiny part was up against the wall.
Mr. McVeigh, what is it that we're looking at here? What is this piece?
It is a piece of foam board insulation that was attached to the wall underneath the vinyl siding.
Okay.
That particular product probably saved this entire house.
Okay, now we've got, still on number page 3, the top one, which I've numbered number 4. We've got 3 photographs, 4 photographs. Photographs, it looks like. And Todd, would you just hold these up one at a time and describe for the council what is shown there?
Okay, this is a photo I took of the property as I was taking the burn material off, and all the stuff that was on there. There was the foil paper and the vinyl siding is drooping down off of property, and there's one stud and a half of, a foot of the next stud that's got charring, that I went ahead and I resheeted that particular area and then insulated over the top. So the fire actually traveled up the wall up to the soffit area. This picture will show that. And the damage entered into the ceiling structure right underneath the soffit.
Okay, now the next one is what's it say on the back there,
4D, as in dog. And this shows basically the same thing. It was literally the foil protected the wall up to the point where the soffit itself gave way, and then the fire traveled into the ceiling at that point. Now, there's no question in my mind that there was fire inside the property, but it was a flash fire ignition, like I can't explain it, but like a backflash or whatever they call that.
Now you've got some Lowe's. What's that material there? Lowe's.
The front porch, all the whole north wall of the front porch right here was windows, and the fire vented through the windows. And I went ahead and I reframed that entire wall, put new sheeting on it, foam board and insulation, and completely replaced that wall that had the fire on it. And the fire was actually on the back side of that. The initial fire that was started.
You did that on the top part too, behind where there's tied at?
On the top parts,
You replaced all the studs? Yeah, you replaced all the studs up there too, and
the studs were sistered up. There was a second one up against it, and they were sheeted on top.
so you did not replace them.
I reinforced them with a second piece of wood. And that is attic space up there. It wouldn't be exposed to any tenants in any way, shape, or form.
So did you shellac or kills those before you reinforced them?
I treated them with a hydrogen peroxide solution. I used a spray bottle and sprayed down the boards themselves.
All right, now we got two more of the outside of the house. They're marked 4E and 4F. Just explain briefly what those show, if you would please.
And these show the multiple windows that were replaced, and all the windows were heat damaged. They were thermal pane, and the heat damaged the inside pane, but not the outside. And as I got into replacing the north windows near the fire, I realized that when they did the remodel, they had went ahead and they flashed them like they do with these. They wrap the existing wood or like trim around the outside of the window with tin, and then they brought the flashing and the siding up to it. And there were some mold issues on the bottom of the windows where the water had, caused that to deteriorate. So I went ahead and I replaced all these windows when I did the siding, and I was waiting to do the windows on the south the same way when I got the rest of the house further along. So this is essentially a street view right now as it sits, less than snow, of course.
All right, next, we're still on the top of unnumbered page 3, alleging covering things up. You've covered anything up that you shouldn't have?
I have not covered anything up yet. It is wide open. And I'm waiting for the go-ahead essentially to move on with this project. And all the plaster and lath have been exposed. There's no fire damage. All the saturated lath and plaster that were near the fire have been removed completely down to the studs. And there's I believe, a picture of the studs right here. Oh, here's the studs. This particular picture is on the opposite side of the fire. The fire was in the front porch, and this is like an entryway looking out into the front porch. A bright light is the front door.
And does that show any burn damage on the studs?
There was no burn damage on the studs on the opposite side of the wall. And the studs are exposed and have not been compromised in any way, shape, or form.
All right, the next one is the ceiling.
And this is the ceiling. All the smoke damaged plaster has been removed, and the lath itself will be removed prior to re-sheetrocking after an inspection by the city.
So how do we know that the 2x4s or 2x6s, ceiling, whatever you call them, joists?
Floor joists? Well, if the lath hasn't burned, this whole ceiling had a suspended ceiling on top of it. So when I removed the suspended ceiling, I also had the original plaster ceiling in place.
So is there any fire damage to the lath, the plaster?
The lath itself has not been, no. The only damage that was to this ceiling was smoke. And that was in the plaster, and I removed the plaster already. And I will be removing the lath.
So the lath is going to come down and you're going to
Yes,
drywall it, right?
yeah, that is correct.
Okay. And what's the last one there?
And the last one is the kitchen area, which would be approximately 8 feet straight to the west of where the fire was. All the lath was removed and the windows replaced. And again, the trim around the windows had heat damage and the bubbling of the varnish, but I went ahead and replaced them because the windows are just simpler to do that way.
Is there a way to visually check the wood if there's any damage to it from heat?
There is no reasonable way to check for the heat. The plaster itself will take the heat first. It's like, well, that's a good question. Is there a good way? I mean, if the wall is plastered, how long would it take for that heat to travel through the plaster?
So 5 days in sheetrock will last 1 hour. If the fire
Rated for 1 hour.
But plaster does have a rating. So what we would look for is charring, evidence of charring.
Okay.
To determine the stability of it.
And basically none of this is none of the lath is charred, and the plaster was attached solidly to the wood, and we literally had to knock it down.
Okay, on 4G, again, you already commented on, does that show some of the new windows that you put in the house?
Yes, there were approximately 6 windows replaced already, and the rest of the windows are in the property waiting to get put in as we proceed.
We're going to put in all new windows?
I have to put in all new windows.
The
front. Well, I've got double pane windows on the, there were pictures taken of windows on the second floor that had cracks in them. Well, that cracks were actually on the first pane of glass of a double pane window. So I went ahead and I removed the rest of the glass out of that window, and the exterior glass was still intact and undamaged. And the tilt feature actually works. I was amazed. But they are intended to be replaced as well. And then this is the second floor bedroom above the fire area. That's the same as the other one, I believe. Yep. And the ceiling tile, you can see the ceiling grid, the 2x4 ceiling tile that were intact. They took all the smoke and all the damage. There is residual here. We'll need to scrub down the rest of the way. It has been treated, but it will need to be scrubbed down a little bit more and probably either resurfaced or replaced with sheetrock.
You talked about a lot of the work on the walls. Ray mentioned the wiring inside the walls needing to be replaced. Have you done any work on the wiring?
I haven't done any work on the property itself. The fuse box is intact. It's a breaker style. It's in good shape. It was in the basement. And my hope is to go ahead and just replace the wiring throughout the house as we get an opportunity to do so. I have no intention of leaving any of the, there's a back addition that was built later that literally saw no heat. The ceiling area saw heat, and that will certainly be opened up and inspected and made sure that there is no damage. There's 2 ceiling fans that are still intact. They've got plastic blades on them. There is a report from the engineer's firm that shows one of the fans that the blades are actually grouped down, and it looks very sad. But the ones back in the back entryway look somewhat happy, comparatively speaking.
All right, let's take a look at what I've got marked. Number 5 is in the center of unnumbered page 3. It says, secondarily, there are many nuisance items scattered about the property. The following nuisances were noted. And Todd, why don't you just go through the list there and tell us what, if anything, you've done? And we've got 1 or 2 photos, I believe, that go along there. Go ahead and start talking.
Yeah, the car parts underneath the open deck were basically a set of.
And you're welcome to talk about that, but none of that is part of the complaint process we're talking about.
Okay.
So feel free to talk, but I just want the council to be aware that none of that was part of the nuisance violation.
Basically, never
You
mind.
want to skip over it? That's fine, we will. Okay, number 6. This property is in immediate risk of collapse. It stood there for 5 years so far, right? And talk about the comments that are made and what you've done directly.
Yeah, I mean, Ray's in the report says, is it in immediate risk of collapse? No, it's not. You know, it's been locked up. And it's uncorrected for over 5 years because I have been restricted from producing any sort of results because of the comments that were made by city officials about my ability to do the work. And you know, I work a full-time job like everyone else, and you know, I have certain amounts of time. I went ahead and I wanted to get work done this winter and found that a city administrator had made arrangements for the gas line to be removed from the property. And I called the gas company asking to have that, you know, put back in place, and they were told, you know, you cannot do that. I had licensed contractors contact Sean Cole about getting the proper procedure, the inspections, the pressure test of the gas lines, and you know, 2 separate contractors were denied. You know, they just said we can't do it. You know, we cannot do it. We just, you know, we have to walk away from this. So you know,
Why did they not want to do it?
well, my feeling was that if they would have, they wouldn't be allowed to do it, first of all. And, you know, if they did do it, they may not, you know, I don't know if they'd be allowed to work in the town or not. I can't answer these questions.
So the gas was cut off? That's
The
what-
gas line was cut off by Line Energy.
Were you notified that that was going to happen at all?
Not at all. And I called to have, you know, find out why the flags were in my yard. And they said, well, you know, the gas source is going to be disconnected. And what do you do? I mean, I called the supervisor. I called every 800 number. I was on the phone for 3 hours trying to figure out what was going on.
So who authorized shutting off the gas? Do we know?
I can tell you the original fire scene, we shut off all utilities because it contributes to the fire, gas, electric, water.
Sure.
Because of the damage, the water will keep spraying.
Right.
The gas risk. I don't know who authorized them to go back on, and then probably were shut off because somebody realized they put back on. There is no way that utilities should have been turned back on
Without being inspected, you know, by licensed contractors. And that's something.
But we're talking about the pipe being cut off, right? Not
The
just-
pipe
not just
physically
turn off the
cut
valve.
from the thing and abandoned, you know, with, you know, I assume the belief that this house was going to be torn down.
So
It was cut at the gas main and at the house.
who authorized that? I'm not asking you, I'm asking.
I have no idea.
I
But
think surmise that it might be the insurance company because they were anticipating.
the insurance company was removed.
Though, right? Wouldn't somebody notify the owner?
At the time, he was probably not there.
This happened last fall, and I was the owner for 4 years.
You have gas on the place.
I did not have gas. I had a request to turn it on, and then they cut it. So, you know, that greatly restricts the ability to do work in the wintertime when you have no heat. And I'm hoping that we'll find some resolution to that and get that taken care of.
Have you contacted them and talked to them about cutting it? Have they said anything to you about it?
They said I need to talk to Sean Cole.
And when did Sean tell you to cease operations on that house?
probably a year and a half, 2 years ago or better.
And when did the fire take place?
Took place about 4 years or 5 years ago.
2014.
That spring of 15 or
So it happened 7 years ago, and Sean told you a year and a half ago.
no, he told me a lot longer than that. I can't recall the actual time frame of when he told me.
You didn't know when the fire occurred?
Did he send you a letter or something?
No, it was a meeting in person.
Did you own it when the fire occurred?
No, I did not.
Purchased it afterwards?
I purchased it after, yes.
All right, I'm gonna pass around a couple more pictures on item 4, the fire damage. This is a pretty good photo here, number 4K. Just briefly describe what that shows.
That shows the baseboard that's been purchased, put on it, and more new windows, I believe.
Is there any fire damage on
There's
that lamp
no
there?
fire damage whatsoever on any of that.
Okay. So what does that indicate with regard to the condition of the studs behind it?
It indicates that they have not been damaged and that, they've been left exposed. I don't want to do this halfway. I want to make this a safe and legal place for anybody to live. And I have owned rental property for the last 20 years. I had rental property over in the Ames area where everything was inspected yearly. And I passed every inspection I had, throughout the career of owning those properties when I had properties names.
You intend to use it as a rental?
I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I'm not, at this point, the market's quite good. And if I really got on it quickly, we could probably sell it. But I've got over 150 pictures of the work I've done so far. And they will be made available to the city, any inspector, any purchaser. I don't want this to be something that someone would find at a later date and go, this has been in a fire. This is part of the history of this house.
So what was your intent when you purchased the house?
The intent of that purchasing the house is to fix it up and potentially rent it or maybe sell it. It's hard to say, but again, as a landlord, when you go to bed at night, you want to be able to sleep at night and know that people are safe, that you are in essentially their care of. And maintaining a safe property, fire smoke detectors and all that stuff, that's all part of that. And that's something that I believe in doing.
All right, I'd like to comment now. This is on unnumbered page 5. We're talking about soot. The entire house has heavy, I'm reading from the top of page, unnumbered page 5. The entire house has heavy soot staining needing to be removed. This is evidence with a back door photo and second floor photo. Well, here's, I don't know what it looks like in the original, but this looks like a real city place, I think. That, show them the picture of what it really looks like.
Well, the time of day makes a big difference on how this is taken. This has been untouched. I have not, got up there with a toothbrush and tried to take any of the soot damage off. There's a little trace of smoke here in the corner from, when the firefighters came in. I assume they came in the back door away from the fire and worked their way into it. So when this door would have been open and all the smoke would have been venting out this particular door. The staining here is actually 2 pieces of paneling screwed over the window that was cracked in the fire. And you can see the wood graining as well.
So this dark part is just a shadow, is that right?
Yeah, that's the sun in a shadow.
So I'm still trying to wrap my head around this whole time frame here. So this happened December 18th, 2014, right?
Yeah.
Whereabouts, yes.
December 20th.
This site observation that you had done happened on November 20th, 2015. At least that's when they gave you their findings.
Yes,
So within a year, you had bought the place
that is
after the
correct.
fire. And then you said somewhere between a year and a half to 2 years ago is when you were told to quit working on the place.
It was probably before that. I have no, I mean,
Okay, I'm just from what you said already, so.
yeah.
Number 3 on this site observation was to remove the front porch in its entirety and replace the foundation, framing, decking posts, rafters and joists and sheeting, roofing and siding. Replace front door, entry door, frame and hardware. This picture, I don't see a picture of the front. Was any of that stuff done prior to?
The front wall, the north wall has been replaced. The floor had not been damaged as much as it appeared when he first walked through. As we removed all the fire residue, got down to the actual flooring, the flooring was intact. There was.
So did you do then number 3 is what I'm asking?
Number 3, I have not had an opportunity to
because,
replace or replace the ceiling and rafters. I have replaced the sheeting and.
Looking over the list, there seems to be a lot of work to do, but the investment is made to bring this existing home back to its use for a family. I would think number 3 would be a really important one to make sure you do in its entirety as it says.
I would go back to Jordan was touching on something a bit ago. Number 5, remove all studs, headers, joists, rafters that show visible charring and replace. You mentioned that you sprayed sistered up to them, but didn't remove them.
They were this long. And I mean, removing the entire wall. The actual wall cavity was filled with blown-in insulation. And the only part that was exposed was the top part where the firefighters blew the insulation out. So, we're talking a stud this tall and a stud that was probably this tall, side by side. I sistered up a board up against each one of those, another 2x4, screwed it to there. Structurally, it's sound. The wood itself was sprayed down with the hydrogen or hydrogen peroxide, neutralizing the stuff that could potentially be there.
And I'm not a contractor at all, so I guess I defer to Ray. Is that an acceptable fix for that? Or
no, 4 tablespoons of trisodium phosphate and 1 cup of bleach is an appropriate source to remove smoke and soot. Hydrogen peroxide is used for minimal stains on carpet.
and you can leave the char, you can char there with a sistered board on there.
No,
Sistered.
if you have any wood that's charred that provides any sort of structural stability or a wall or the actual house itself is going to be removed. And I can talk about it later, but I would really look at the recommendations of the expert.
So if you had an expert come out and look at this again, how many of these did you actually fix? Out of all of these things that he observed, the architecture, what did you actually fix from that list?
We've removed all the soot staining and we've removed all the fire damaged materials and exposed all the 2x4s and all the structural lumber that was near the fire and had any chance of being exposed to the fire. There are 2 2x4s up in the very attic in the place that I sistered up a 2x4 to. The rest of it has just been exposed so that I can deal with it as needed. And I would love to get the input of professionals in the room or wherever. I've done renovation on this sort of thing, and basically, if there is fire damage, I will replace it. The front porch wall, I replaced the entire north side.
Mr. McVeigh, how long do you think it would take to bring this house into compliance? Plumbing code, electrical code, restore the house so somebody can live in there?
6 to 8 months.
Okay.
Have you pulled any permits for the work that you've done so far or any of the work that you would plan to do?
I haven't done any work that requires a permit yet. I'm waiting for, direction.
When you say direction, you mean approval to get started?
That would be a good thing, yeah.
Has there been a request for approval to move forward? Sorry, I know this echoes super weird with these. Has there been a request on your part to move forward with this?
Well, if there isn't, I would like to request a permit or permission to move forward at this point.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Todd. The fire chief has indicated that hydrogen peroxide didn't do any good for the problem you attempted to solve.
Okay.
Are you ready, willing, and able to consult with the fire chief and any other expert?
I would love to.
Get his
Yeah.
formula, which was, I forgot already what it was. But
He's got a formula.
He's got a formula. You willing to work with him and get that information and put it to use in this house?
I would love to work with the city to make this house the property it was prior to the fire. And with Sean Cole response to how this, he literally told the realtor prior to me buying the property that he was going to tear it down. And he had no desire on anyone fixing it. And at this point, I don't know of anybody making a request from the city to actually do a walkthrough on the property in its condition and see, where we need to go, what we need to do. And I would love to have that.
Well, maybe we should definitely have a walkthrough then and check it all out. The other thing that I would ask is I would like to see another report from an architect or an engineer that specifically addresses all of these issues that were originally addressed in the report that was filed in 2016.
Okay.
Some comments were made, and I don't remember what page they were in the fire chief's report, but some comments were made about the sagging roof on the garage. Oh, here it is. Photographs are number 6A and 6B. Just explain both of what those are, please.
Well, the garage itself had a furnace in it with a ceiling and insulation. And when the fire was there, most of the fire rolled out the garage door when they were fighting it. And the rafters were substantially salvaged, protected by that ceiling and the insulation during the fire. I still need to address replacing the ones that are damaged. But structurally they're sound and it does not leak. I did put siding on the front of it to pretty it up because the top boards above the door, it had charring and such. Those have been removed and replaced with sheeting and siding above the, on the peak of a two-car garage essentially.
Now, is there any indication in your mind that the roof in that garage is sagging?
Yeah, there is no sag in the roof, beyond, an inch and a half of any property garage has been standing for 30 years or 40 years.
So if you hold a straight edge up there, it's pretty easy to see that it's not, right?
Yeah.
And that's covered with snow?
And that's got probably, winter's worth of snowfall on it.
Okay. And last but not least, let's briefly describe what that photograph shows and what you've done to it, what you intend to do.
Yeah, this particular picture is right inside the back door, looking in where the paneling was screwed on the door. This is the actual paneling that's inside the door, and the amount of soot staining on it. Because it was so dark in there, it looks a lot more ominous than it actually is. And of course, this is the 80s paneling.
You brought with you some paneling.
Yes.
Where did this come from?
This paneling came from the steps going up into the second floor, which was seeing the most heat and fire. And I believe Ray took a picture of the steps showing that, there's fire damage and such. The paneling itself has been damaged on one side, and on the back side has not been damaged at all, because the firefighters did get it put out quite readily. And this particular part is the wallpaper that was underneath the paneling. So this was throughout the entire house. And this is what I removed immediately, even prior to me buying the property, just to get the parsonage is removed.
And this paneling was throughout the whole house,
Throughout the entire house.
upstairs and downstairs both?
He was very good at putting up paneling.
All right, and the same stuff all over.
It was a beautiful thing. Yeah, I mean, when I first saw it, it was jet black, like any fire, and that's what took the most heat and the most damage. And the kitchen had the square, the square 1-inch tile or 1-foot tile, the Staple-Lite Sea-Lite type style of ceiling, and those have been removed. And then the wood strips that held that up are completely intact.
Okay, I'm gonna pass it around. I'll pass this around. Be careful, there isn't one nail sticking out there.
And it's a little rough around the edges, and lots of chunky things fall off of it.
Now, if the back side of that paneling isn't burnt or scarred, does that indicate what the 2x4s underneath it are?
I'm optimistic that the 2x4s are still intact. That's
Okay. And if in order for them to be burned,
that would have to be burned completely through. Yes.
So you-
The name.
And keep open end up.
So you've not visually seen the 2x4s, it's me, sorry. You've not seen the 2x4s that,
On most of the fire that was mainly concentrated in the front part of the room and, in the front porch. This is the house where the young man set the porch on fire and the garage on fire, then drove through the front door of the wooden quick. If that puts any reality to what this was. He wasn't intending on burning his house down. He was intending on creating distractions so he could go do that. And, it's an unfortunate misunderstanding of, a lot of emotional issues.
have you laid eyes on the 2x4s?
I laid eyes on all the 2x4s that are at the origin of the fire and out to the point where they would be damaged. And I am confident that on the other side of the wall, the plaster protected those 2x4s. The plaster and the lap on those particular walls has been removed, exposing those 2x4s for inspection. And I'll be happy to invite that in.
So that sounds like you got stuff got.
I got stuff
Now
that
you need a second inspection.
I need direction and inspection. And the go-ahead to complete this.
Anybody else have any questions? Or anything?
That was charred that you thought you treated with the hydrogen peroxide that is not visible anymore?
There's nothing that has been covered up. Those 2x4s from the inside, I invite Ray to come in and take a look, and we'll get some opinions on. There's been no recovering on the inside. The only thing I did was make it structurally sound and weather tight.
Sure.
So that there would be no more further damage.
So
to the
whatever you
property.
covered up on the outside, visible from the inside then?
Yes, that could be visible from the inside, up in the attic.
And any other part that you might have, so you
None.
put some new siding and stuff
Absolutely
up?
none.
Just one question. I know you're not in the real estate business and you're not a licensed inspector or whatever you call them. What in your opinion, you bought and sold a lot of property, I know that. What in your opinion and the current market, if this house is ready for sale, say in 6 months from now, in your opinion, based on the current market, what do you think a range, don't give us a specific number, a range of what the retail price of that house might bring?
The retail price would probably be around 140 to 150,000, more or less, with a 2-car detached garage and the square footage. And of course, in this market, we don't know where that's going to go. I'm not worried about the valuation of it. We do have documentation that it is fully insured and protected from here on forward from any other fires that might be, that may or may not happen. I do have a policy with it with the full coverage, much like everyone's house, and we do have a copy of that as well.
What's the value of that coverage?
The valuation on the coverage is at 200,000 replacement cost.
Okay.
And that is the documentation I've got is a renewal. It was insured the day I bought it. liability wise, I just can't expose myself to anything like that. So the insurance company felt confident in insuring it. I felt confident in building it. And I'm hoping to get the approval to continue.
Council, any other questions for Mr. McVeigh?
Dane asked the question, had you gotten any permits to do anything in, the 2 years, I'm gonna guess, give or take, prior to being told to quit working on it? Was there anything done by you other than getting this evaluation and then not doing certain things on this evaluation?
I've been maintaining the property. I've been
Permits to
cleaning
have
up
the
the
work
yard.
done?
Permit wise, my hands were tied.
Before you were told not to work on it, he literally didn't come to you the day you bought it.
Oh, he all but did, yeah.
So how did you get all that new siding, new housing, new windows and stuff put in?
You don't need a permit to put on siding or windows at this
Okay.
point.
There's no
Requirement.
But I'm just saying, you had some time, you could have approached the city with some questions or whatnot. You had a nice layout of things to do.
At any point, did you try to reach out to the city council or mayor or the city administrator to see if we could figure out a solution for this instead of prolonging the?
I wasn't sure how hostile the city actually was at this point. I've had property in the area and I've had situations come up that may change the dynamics of my relationship with the city. And we need to work those out and figure out where to move on from here. Sean Cole had a water service, did an inspection on the sump pump, but did not check to make sure that the water service itself was functioning, or that there's no meter there. And then I get a notice that it's going to cost me $750 to replace the shutoff valve because it's not working. Well, if the meter is disconnected and there's no water to the house right now, somebody would have had to have noticed that when they shut it off, and they didn't. I don't know why that was, and so we ended up settling with the next one of the previous administrators, and split the cost, and call that a fair compromise, because evidently the water was shut off in the house, but it could not be shut off at the curb stop. And, nobody notified me of that. And that would have been the seller's responsibility prior to me buying it.
Well, anytime you purchase a house, you gotta turn the water on in your name. It's not gonna stay in
The physical process of turning it on and off, not the, if there's no meter and you don't, if the house had a fire and the water pipes are frozen, turning the water on is probably one of the last things you want to do until you've got the plumbing replaced. The curb stop didn't work. Yeah, it is. And that was the situation, was that in the process of buying it, the water was shut off in the previous owner's name, but it was never shut off at the curb box. No, I'm not, it's just a glitch, and it's something that we came to a conclusion on, and we split the difference, so that's fine. I had no problems against that.
Any more questions, Todd?
Yeah. Well, there are, as far as going.
I think Chief wanted a chance to talk about some of the pictures.
Sounds good. Is there anything else, Ray, that you had? Okay.
Mayor, would it be possible to pause for a break before we continue?
Okay, we'll do a quick pause for Dane, and then Ray can come up and
Thank you.
and talk to whatever you have for pictures, and then council can consider pathway forward.
Like going on vacation with the kids. You want me here or there?
It doesn't matter. I was just gonna talk about pictures and a
Okay.
potential path forward.
Okay, yeah, so as soon as Dane comes back, we can get to that.
Never did like that. I did take that out.
Oh, that.
Okay, no, it was not kind of a dated thing.
I mean, we thought about it. It's a beautiful house.
Yeah. And, and what I paid for it, I've got the, the resources to continue on. And, just the challenge that I felt that we were dealing with. I hope we can move forward.
Well, I'm pretty sure the city just wants a safe building.
And so do I.
So while we're waiting for Dane, I can kind of talk about, so that you guys can frame questions in your mind before we close up. You're basically, tonight we have to decide, A, does the property fit the definition in the code, or B, it does not. If you decide it does, you do have discretion on what you want to see in the time frame you want to see it in. So you can be thinking about that too. Since we have this special meeting already on Thursday, Aaron can take your wishes and craft any changes to an order to approve then. So just so your wheels can be spinning to ask any final questions you may have in order to get the order one way or the other. So there's one that's under tab 8, which would be an example or a draft if you decide it does fit the definition, and under 9 is if it does not fit the definition. So with that.
Can I ask one more question? Yeah. Sir. So you mentioned that it takes 6 to 8 months to get it up to livable standards, right? At the end of 8 months, what happens if it's not?
I guess we just have to tear it down. I mean, simple as that. It's,
So you're
I am willing to make that commitment.
So you're willing to tear it down if you don't have everything done and fixed in 8 months?
I'm willing.
Well, in the annals of the law, there's a word that's called, that kind of is both sides of the whole fudging, and it's called substantial.
I am
So if
substantial.
he only has 3 or 4 or 5 days, maybe a week's worth of work left, but it didn't meet the deadline, he's substantially compliant, and it would be a shame to tear it down, because you're tearing down part of your tax base.
If we're saying 6 to 8, if you think it's gonna take 6 to 8 months, what if we gave you a year?
That would be incredible. Realistically,
But I would ask for some, to Mr. Jewell's point, I would ask for substantial completion in 6 to 8 months with punch list items to complete. I mean, you guys can do all sorts of things with this, but I think the goal of everybody is to have a house that somebody can live in, right? I mean, that's the goal here.
and I've done enough to make it so it's not an eyesore to the neighborhood, but the repairs on the inside do need to be done. And I'm not questioning that at all, and I'd love to work with Ray and the city and make this happen.
Can I ask Ray a question?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any, can this house be rebuilt without tearing down and building up a brand new house? Can this house be rebuilt safely in your mind as a former state fire chief?
I think it can with some parameters, and I was just gonna give you some thought on this. I mean, we could talk about whether it was a fire or not a fire, or flashover or what have you, all night long, but I don't know that that's gonna solve any problem. There's substantial smoke damage throughout this house. You can just look at our pictures that were taken by the city. The ceiling fans melted. I mean, there's substantial damage. So I cannot be their expert. That puts the city in tremendous liability for me to say yes or no, this is good, this is bad. But what I would suggest is if you were to consider this house to be renovated, there's a couple of things. The main point is it doesn't serve anybody any good to have a vacant house that sits there. We all agree on that. I think the real issue is, if you allow Mr. McVeigh to do this, and there's a disagreement on his interpretation of quality and our interpretation of quality, who wins? And so that's the problem you run into. But I think there's a way to fix that. One is, I think you need to look at the experts' recommendations. If you want to bring in a second expert to say, these are the things that need to be done, I think you got to base your decision off of the expert's opinion of what is fire damage and what is repairable. Not, I've pulled the paneling off and there's no obvious charring, so I think I'm good to go. The second thing is, you've really got to look at a fire restoration company coming in and pulling the smoke and toxins out of this house. The house that caught fire during the derecho, there was a fire restoration company there for 6 months, pulling water out of the house, pulling smoke out of the house to make that house livable. And it's just now occupiable again and livable. So we sprayed probably 4,000 gallons of water. So this was not a flash fire over paneling. The other thing, beyond an expert assessment and a fire restoration removal, is Mr. McVeigh needs a written plan that he's going to follow, and not, I think I can just put a new wall up here. And I'm not saying this to be mean or anything. I think you're a great asset to our community. But he's got to have a written plan on how he's going to comply with the experts' recommendations. And then the last thing is, he's got to follow the permit process of our city. And, you know, we've got a city engineer that's familiar with construction and stuff like that until a building official gets in. I'm more than happy to advise, as I have in the past, but I can't be the guy that say, yeah, that's good enough, because I think that's why that third-party contractor is important. In the state of Iowa, to do electrical work, you need to be a licensed contractor, and the electrical component of our city's inspection process is the state fire marshal's office electrical people. So I think the house is doable. I'm concerned if you just turn a homeowner over it, he's going to make it look like a house. And that's not to say every person's got a different opinion of construction. You certainly don't want me doing it. But I do believe that those would be some parameters that I would look at if I were going to do this. But it's a beautiful house. It's a shame that it was set on fire. I think if you were to bring this back, I think your estimates are quite low on the value of the house, but I think it's a beautiful house. But I'm very concerned about what happens if he says, no, this is good enough, and the expert says, no, it's not. Where do we go from there? I don't want to be back 8 months from now arguing over paneling versus an appropriate wall. So that would be my take in this, and I don't know if you want to weigh in.
And realistically, what I'd like to do is have you come through and see where we're at. You know, just a visual inspection, and then, you know, maybe report back to the city next month with what you may or may have found.
Yeah, I believe that you probably pulled a lot of plaster off. I believe that you're attempting to clean the fire damage up. We've certainly pulled the gas can out of the house and removed a lot of the insulation and debris. But in my opinion, that is not a renovation of a fire damaged house. And I will tell you, if you look at our community, there aren't a whole lot of houses that suffer substantial damage. They get rebuilt in their same house. They get tore down. The insurance company fully intended to tear this house down until Mr. McVeigh bought it and said, I'll take it. And so, so that should weigh in too.
So here's something that, just as you were speaking, Ray, that kind of came to my mind. If we gave them 2 months to get a full fire inspection, restoration, examination done, and a written plan with the structural engineer input, kind of like we've had before, and then at that point, present that to the council, and maybe then we give them, you know, the 8 to 12 months or whatever it is.
He may get that
fire,
he may get that estimate and have a better idea whether he wants to do this.
You might not want to do it after that point. If, you know, it is going to be.
But those are the experts that are going to tell you that I feel safe putting a family in here because we can remove all this.
And that removes our liability too.
Absolutely.
At that point. So that would be kind of what came to mind.
It costs you a lot to get the assessment done. Then you got to decide, do I want to do it or not?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a number of fire companies that'll come in and say, here's what we think it's going to cost.
Are you comfortable with Denver design?
I think they did a great job on their initial assessment as far as the damage. I think you still need a fire restoration company to come through, like Service Pro, or, you know, there's a number of companies that you could look up on your own, and then they could provide the city a report.
that anything you do, I think full transparency to the city and us is gonna make everybody kind of
Comfortable.
yeah, let's work this thing out.
You bet.
But Jason, I kind of like your idea there. It might be fair to wait on that clock starting until after we have a new planning and zoning department head as well, though. Otherwise, we're kind of spinning our wheels, waiting for that to get done. But
But I don't think we're asking for city input on that phase. I
No,
think that the input is coming from the intentional third party.
Yep.
That's gonna tell them what steps need to be done.
I
full
think-
plan.
It may, if I may.
Yep.
ma'am. I'm thinking what they're saying is, we need to get service master to come in here and take a look and have a list of, a quote of what it's gonna take. and-
so you can have an idea on how much this is going to cost and whether or not you want to continue.
Yeah, there's United Services, Service Master, Master Service. There's a
AK,
number
he's
of
got 2 months to let us know what he's gonna do and how much it's gonna cost and how long it's gonna take him to do it. And who's gonna help him do it.
Do you guys think that's fair? Is that doable, Ray?
I believe in 2 months, you'll know whether he's gonna follow through with this. I think in 2 months, you get the expert to come in and redo what they did. You bring in the fire restoration company to say, yes, it's doable, or no, this house isn't doable. He comes back to the city in 2 months and says, look, I've decided I'm not doing this, or I'm gonna do this, and I think I can do it. And then you can hash out I'm not the negotiator here,
Right.
but I think you've got to have the opinion of those experts.
Mr. McVeigh, is that a fair starting point, you think?
Rather fair starting point. Yes.
From the sounds of the questioning, I'm assuming there's consensus that you're considering to qualify under the definition, and then you're looking for what you want to see.
I'm hearing, and when he says definition, the council is agreeing this is a nuisance property. It does meet the definition of a dangerous building under the city's code.
For
Okay.
the fire damage. Yes.
Right, well, and there's several prongs to it, but the ones that we've highlighted is that it's abandoned, nobody's living in it. There's fire damage.
Yep.
Right, and it's uninhabitable. So those are the things, the prongs that we're looking at when we're making the decision, the council's making the decision that it's dangerous under their code. So we can draft a resolution, and if council, you want to look at tab 8, I've got the beginnings of just a generic template, right? But I can add in the thoughts that we're hearing tonight, and do the first part of that we're finding this property to be a nuisance under your code, and we're going to give the 2 months to do X, Y, and Z, and then we'll schedule another meeting, another council meeting to hear additional input and further council direction. And so I can craft that resolution to have on Thursday morning's agenda.
Sounds good.
What we need to do.
Now, will I need to be here for that or not?
You would not need to be here for Thursday
No, we
morning.
ain't gonna
No.
change anything we're doing now. It's just pretty much gonna hold your feet to the fire.
Yep.
Is what it's gonna do,
We would get a copy to you and.
That's an interesting pun to use, there, Brian.
Right. And I think the big thing is throwing gas in the fire. I can tell that house you want to do, Todd's great for the city. That's the kind of housing we need.
Yeah.
I think the big thing, it's been 6 years.
Yeah.
It's sitting there. It's an eyesore. It's dangerous. Kids could get in it. Blah, 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 blah. We could talk about
Well,
forever.
we
could throw the city under the bus, but you haven't really been proactive about it. So we are now. So we're kind of holding your feet to fire. So it's like, hey, Todd, let's do something or not do something.
Yeah.
But this resolution that we're gonna do is if you don't do anything, then we will do something, so
Yeah.
to speak. But it sounds like you want to, so let's get a plan.
I
Let's get
feel
it done, 'cause
confident
I think
that,
it'd be a great home for someone at some point.
I feel confident that you wouldn't have gone through all the steps to go through this tonight without a desire to
Well, yeah,
fix the property.
Absolutely.
yeah,
As long as it's through all the
I'm a
proper
stubborn
inspections.
man. Just, and we'll do what we need to do. Yes.
Okay.
Aaron or somebody,
Sounds
if you were to choose to sell the house once it's been renovated, is there any disclosure about the fact that house had been involved in a fire? Is that something?
There will
you know,
be full disclosure on the fire. I believe in disclosing anything that happens with any of the properties that I deal with.
So the Iowa code actually requires you to fill out a disclosure form.
Okay.
So one of the things, has there been any any part of the structure that's, been damaged? So it would have to be disclosed.
And I have all the pictures I've taken from the day I bought it that will be made available to, with the abstract.
Yeah, that would be true for a renter as well.
And that could be true for a renter as well, yes. I have no problem with that at all.
Do we need a motion or anything, or can Aaron just?
We wouldn't need action tonight. We're taking
Okay.
consensus for Aaron to then update the template for you to approve on Thursday.
Okay, and we will provide a copy to the both of you of that resolution after Thursday.
That sounds great.
I want to thank all of you for your attention and your
Patience.
consideration and your patience, and I'll, God slows down too much, let me know.
Okay.
I have a big foot. And,
Oh, I've heard that, yes.
yeah, okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Closes that hearing for this evening and moves us into reports, starting with city administrator.
Aside from my report that I sent on Friday, I do not have anything, but I would gladly answer questions you may have regarding my report or anything else.
Okay, then for my report, again, I wanted to thank all of our city folks that helped out with the boost vaccine day at Gates Hall. Had another roughly 1,200 folks come through for that day and went super smooth, and we had good help from our fire and EMS department and police department that were part of making that a success. Vaccines are super available, so if you know people that still need them, send them our way. We're begging to use them up before they go bad. So with that, otherwise, we're collaborating with Main Street on trying to get some murals put up downtown. So that would be fun, exciting new additions. So had a meeting on that the other day. Do you have any questions for me?
Brent, are they doing vaccinations for anyone under 16 yet?
No, it's 6. So Pfizer, you can do down to 16. But yeah, they're studying it though lower. So should be.
The high school sent the thing out for 16
Yeah.
and above, but I didn't know if something that went through the district.
Yeah, nothing yet below 16, but I would expect that hopefully this summer that they'll have enough data to go ahead and authorize younger. So hopefully by next
I don't know
school.
why people ask me that, but at least I can answer it now.
Yeah, we will be going to the high school Wednesday to do 16 to 18-year-olds that have not been done and make it easy for them. So
Yeah, and we're working, the nonprofit arena is still working at getting that word out.
yeah, I'd asked Barb with Food at First and whatnot to make sure that those folks have an opportunity to get vaccinated so they don't fall through the cracks. Okay, anything else for me? Okay, council reports.
Donuts, baby. Donut Dash on Saturday, huge success. A lot of people deserve credit. Feltner's and Bricktown Bakery, and having that event. We had the highest registration we've ever had for a running event in this town, and that speaks volumes to, I think, a lot of things. But the fact that people are wanting to get out of their house to do things again, and the fact that we're able to raise some money. I don't know what the final numbers are because we still need to get billed for our shirts, but we raised a significant amount of money for Food at First through that race. So that was really awesome. We might have another big announcement coming very soon from runners, but yeah, really good things happening. Really proud of the community and really cool to see that many people downtown and dressed as donuts and unicorns and whatever else. It was a good look for Nevada.
Other council reports?
It doesn't have anything to do with the city, but Dean's talking about running, so I guess I can talk about our Masonic stuff that we've done. Our pancake breakfast raised over $2,000 for scholarships. So that went really well. And then we've got a food truck cook-off that we're gonna have at Central Elementary. And we'll have a car show and a bags tournament. So we're looking for judges for the food trucks. All the proceeds you're gonna pay for to be a judge. But all those proceeds go towards the scholarship, or no, backpack buddy program. This one is.
Can I be a judge and win the bags tournament at the same time?
Yes, you could.
Okay.
So, if anybody's interested, just go to our Masonic Facebook page. All the info there.
Other council reports?
Kind of on the same topic, I've been coaching the high school boys in their spring league baseball, and we've got to host almost every weekend at our new baseball diamond. unbelievable response from these teams that we don't normally play, that don't normally come to Des Moines Christian, East Marshall, just schools like that. And it's just unreal, the people that just can't believe what a baseball field we have in town. So just thought I'd pass on. It's a great thing out there. I've been always throw in the new field house in the discussion. They go, really? You know, and so it's pretty cool, the response from people from out of town that appreciate what we have. And I think most people do. So it's been pretty good spring.
Back to staff reports and have Jeremy come up.
Much. Mark Jones started as wastewater superintendent. He started last Monday, and doing a real good job so far. And as you see, we've been patching around town, patching potholes with the patcher. Put a lot of rock down, letting the oil cure, and we'll pick it back up. I know there's been a lot of concerns and comments about the loose gravel, but I ride 4 miles every day with my motorcycle. That's all I have.
Jeremy, how much time elapses before you get the rock picked up? We had a wipe out in front of the church, the bike, you know, just right there, because it had been done right at the curb just past.
About a week.
Okay.
You know,
Because I think it was maybe
last year it took a while for it to cure out,
It
as
was
you can
Thursday
tell.
or Friday that it got put down. I didn't notice it before that, but
We'll keep an eye on it and get it picked up as soon as it cures out. The rock is for everybody's protection, so oil don't track and splatter, and
right.
So
Yeah.
it's growing pains.
Yeah.
Anything else?
And
Looking for a new guy to replace Dennis yet?
Yes, it's posted.
And I know we hear about the new pothole filling technique, but the old technique, we got lots of complaints all the time too, because they put stuff in there and it'd come right back out because it was the cold seal stuff. And it would track all over. So
Yeah. Well,
no
this one
perfect
was-
solution.
Yeah,
but
this one was right along the curb, and so I'm sure it wasn't easy to lay the gravel where it was either. So it kind of piled up.
It seems way better than a better Band-Aid, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Mill out and replace the asphalt. It's
Way
the best, but
Milling machine.
milling machine, a lay down machine, Protect. Thanks.
Thanks. Greg.
Thank you for your support tonight. I know on Endeavor that it's easy to blame the guy that isn't here, but Sean Cole did an awful lot of work for our community and putting this together. And so I'm happy to carry the torch for him. I do believe vacant houses are something that as a city administrator talked about that we need to address, and you'll see some more action coming forward. Just a couple of things. Mary Greeley Medical Center has donated a cardiac monitor. It's our second one that they have given us. They've switched to a different brand, newer model, what have you. So we are been given about an $18,000 cardiac monitor that will now give us 2. So I'll have one in our medical unit. We'll have one. So they've been a really good partner, the hospitals and everything. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about just the constant communication that we have with Story Medical, our partners, and Mary Greeley. So that has gone real well. I'm happy to say that Marla snagged me for an egg hunt for the egg thing, and it was a really busy day, and I wasn't overly excited about it, but I kind of bucked up and did it, and it was actually a lot of fun. And we were at a residence, and the mother and her 2 children were there, and they of course wanted a picture. But what was important about this is that she spoke Spanish and spoke very fluent Spanish and English. And as most of you know, I'm finishing my master's degree, and my last class was diversity, equality, and inclusion. And one of the key things that they talked about was having an elevator speech whenever you come into contact with somebody. And I was walking back to the police car, and I stopped and I turned around and I actually went up to her and said, "Have you thought about getting on the fire department?" And she said, "I've actually thought about getting on the police department." And so we had a really good conversation. I'm happy to report she'll be coming in front of the membership to be a rehab technician. And
it's just a valuable asset to our community. The fire department currently sits at about 39% diversity for female minorities and various diversity aspects. So the national average is currently about 4.5. And so I think that speaks well about having that elevator speech. And they also say that your recruitment comes from within the best. So I would just encourage everyone to have that elevator speech and recruit for us as well. So that's what I have.
So is she applying for the police department too then?
Yeah, we're having that. It was
Things are
funny.
hanging like that.
It's funny. She said she did the times for the Cooper test on her treadmill. So we don't require the Cooper test for the fire department, but the police department does. So I would assume that that we'll have that. I also came into contact with another individual on a case that we were solving regarding a stolen bike, but having that conversation about the city and the resources that we provide, they had also thought about testing for the police department, but there was just nobody was there to say, hey, you should do it. And so actually I provided the testing information to that individual, and I believe that they're going to be turning in their application as well, and they're city resident as well. So I think both of them will represent our city well if they get to that process. So, but it's a very quality controlled process for a reason.
Mhm.
Thanks, Frank. Tim?
I need to apologize. I did not get a report in your packet this meeting, so I'll try not to let that happen again. But some of the things that we've got going on, our spring programming is really busy right now. Grounds crew, we're trying to get cemetery ready for Memorial Day, things like that. But more importantly, you need to recognize the Rotary Club for their service work on April 14th, I think it was. They came out to the pool and put in a good afternoon and probably saved us a couple weeks worth of work. We've had some good volunteers at the cemetery helping with some projects out there. Harrington Park had 33 new trees planted by the elementary school a week ago. We had 3 additional ones planted on Sunday by a Girl Scout troop. So, the community has been really good this spring. And so we're off and running, and we do certainly appreciate all the support that we've been given. So outside of that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks. Rick?
Every quarter, we have been hosting a meeting with all the chiefs and executives for law enforcement. We just had a meeting this last Thursday, and we talked about the hiring issues that we've been facing, and a lot of the other agencies are doing the same thing. And there's a lot of departments that are not just us, but there's a lot of departments that are trying to provide incentives, but so far that really isn't a real big enticement, so with Kellen starting today, that's good, but as you know, we still have three openings we have to fill, and we're going through the process now. Ray talking to people in the community, I know I have, and so have all my sergeants. So we're all looking to get those people out there that to come in and take a look at our profession and what we have to offer. But it's going to be a while. And one of the speculations from one of the chiefs was they don't see anything changing probably for the next 5 years, and that's very possible. But it's still a good profession, and I think most people support police and what we do. But we're going through a tough time right now, and there's going to probably be some significant changes over the next few years in law enforcement, and I'm not opposed to that. I certainly don't mind looking at for better ways of doing things, but it's kind of tough right now. So be patient, talk to people. Our process is pretty straightforward. And as I've told you before, and I've emphasized this to the mayor and Jordan, that we're not going to lower our standards. So if it takes a while, then it takes a while. So that's all I got, unless you have any questions about anything. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Larry's heading up next.
After the last council meeting, it dawned on me that we have a tremendous number of projects going on in Nevada. And at last count, there are 6 of us that are project managers that are working on various projects. And so there's a lot of those projects I don't know a lot about. So in your packets, there is a monthly update of projects that we're working on. So I hope that helps you, because it certainly helps me know what's going on in some of those. I do have a correction on one of those, and that's the downtown project. I think I indicated that the alley, the west alley, between J and K, and the west block of K Avenue were under construction. Also, the next alley north from K Avenue to Lincoln Highway is also under construction. All 3 of those segments, the underground infrastructure is in place, done, and ready for the construct to come in and do the paving there. Before Sean left last week, he contacted me and gave me an update on when the construct would be back in. Now that On Track, who's doing all the underground work, is done, they're about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the paving contractor. So they're going to leave briefly for about a week or so, and then be back in to start on the east side. Construct is now paving in the South Glen subdivision. They should be done this week, and then they will move over and do the paving in the West F Avenue subdivision. And then they will come to downtown and do the alleys. There's 2 alleys, and then the 1 block of K Avenue. So you should see them in here in about 2 weeks to start working on the downtown project again on the paving part. They'll start the underground next week again on the east block of K Avenue, and then those 2 alleys. So you'll see some a little lag in activity downtown. We apologize for that, but one contractor got ahead of the other one. So you'll see them shortly. So with that, you have the report, and I would answer any questions you might have. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry. And Mike is online. I don't know if Mike Roth has anything he would like to add.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I have nothing further to add unless there are any questions related to any of the wastewater treatment facility improvements project at this time.
Thank you for being here. We'll go over to Karen.
Been working on the budget amendment. We can grab that. So we received in this full use tax incentive, so it was nice of us.
Thanks, Karen. We'll go over to Aaron.
I don't have anything to report, but I did want to just publicly thank Ray. When he says he took the torch on this nuisance abatement, he found out Thursday that he was going to be the guy that was going to run with this. So he was able to provide the fire inspection report Thursday and get us all the material we needed. So thank you for doing that. You did a great job.
Council, anything else before we adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Oh
Dang, he's gonna go home and pout now. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay.
We're staying another hour.
No. I have had that happen.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Andre doesn't like